Call me an antique, but I do not trust clouds that are not made of water. Despite my life, purchasing patterns included, having been condensed into the boundless ether of a Google sky, saturation of this magnitude, the iconography of a new era cannot happen without the evaporation of something else. For example, attention spans. How the attention once spanned a landscape layered with stories. How survival depended upon presence, sustenance, both physical and spiritual, unthinkable outside of circular relationships, round like a seed, round like the golden corona of the sun, elliptical shadows of the womb. All was undivided attention, time, an endless spiral of seasons, not some Black Friday mad dash into the future. Call me woo-woo kumbaya, but the march of progress has become a breakneck sprint, an all-consuming stampede, an Adderall-addled race to the top, standardized minds climbing exponential lines that lead inevitably to a cliff, the lip of a canyon named distance. How quickly the mind wanders from the source of life and takes for granted the water streaming through the bottom of the gorge, be it poisoned or choked with the silt of industry. I do not trust channels that aren't gushing, otherwise I might find my own tears to be less than normal, pixelated, digitized, my own dreams to be less than real, and this is all really about recognition and empathy. I need to be honest with you. My nervous system is scared to tell you how badly my synapses want to dance with yours, how compassion does not survive without companionship. The mind, too often an echo chamber funhouse, distorted and out of proportion, and then sometimes the ego goes viral and feelings become products, and we're back to consumption in an age where most social interactions have become transactions, and on-screen stimulation leads to disconnected numbness. Sometimes a story will not fit in any register, or reach the high resolution, the high definition of high resolution. Stories were made to be held by many hands. None of this atlas burden lurching on disordered spines, shoulders so torn they can hold nothing and no one else. I believe in the cartography of the palm. How enough open hands unfurled together create their own arcs of latitude, creased passageways of longitude. When I am alone for too long, I try to reassemble the same sense of connection via Wi-Fi, only to remember the world written into my skin, hiding beneath the piece of plastic that keeps me mobile but not rooted. Scroll down. Scroll down even farther, this time with your eyes. Bring your hands up as though you are about to receive a gift. Connect the fragments of your atlas to those close to you. Therein, every callus, every tear wiped away, every caress, the world more tenable and sensuous, storied lines that long to be seen and sung. However, our communities have become too fractured to regard the whole. We have settled for only being seen in profile. The two-dimensional hieroglyphs of modernity, emoticon empathy, hardwired narratives. Call me a stick in the mud. And perhaps my hostility to the digital is largely out of incompetence, or more likely out of impatience with an age that is hemorrhaging attention, empathy, and eventually humanity, as though it were polar ice, freshwater streams, groundwater in an increasingly rootless world. Yes, call me a stick in the mud. A buffer against erosion. A divining rod chasing a deeper thirst. Dress me in ribbons and make of me a maypole, ready for the ritual. An antique, woo-woo, kumbaya, stick in the mud, antenna of earth, concentric circles of stories reaching out across an atlas of empty hands. When the clouds finally break open, we will remember it has been too long since rain has touched our dry, cracked lips. It has been too long since our voices have been wet with enough water for us to finally clear our throats and speak. Can you hear it? how the rain falls like 1,000 whispers at once. Can you hear it? Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Now for a TED Talk. All right, let's do this. And then jazzercise after that. Okay. So my name is Griffin Payne. I am a poet. I am an educator. I also work in the field of mental health. Before we get started, I need your help with something. So when I say speak up, you're going to say get free, okay? Speak up. Get free. Speak up. Get free. Speak up. Get free. All right. I believe you. I believe you. I got a room full of people telling me to get free. Can you just imagine for a second how your life might be different if you consistently had a room full of people telling you to get free? Just think about that. Cheering you on, get free! What kind of life choices would you make? How bold would you be? What kind of courage would you have? If you ever want the experience, you should come on down to the monthly Youth Poetry Slam at NC Stage. Yeah! I don't know who that was. But the next one is March 11th, 7 o'clock at NC Stage. Come on down. That's what we shout to our youth poets as they are about to get on stage. We shout to them to get free, right as they're about to share their stories, share their poetry, because we want them to just let it all go, and we want to see them shine as bright as possible. So I've been a part of the Poetry Slam movement for about 6 years, and it is a movement. It's a movement of democratized stages, grassroots storytelling, people coming together in ritual to have a good time, but to tell the truth. And I've had a lot of time to think about getting free. What does that mean to me? It's become daily practice. And the first thing that comes to mind is getting free from something. So constraints, so whether it be a box or a cage or shackles, getting free from something. And for me, getting free is something that is radical. And radical means going to the root. Getting free extends beyond those constraints and those conditions, and it goes to the root of who we are as human beings. And who we are as human beings, we are storied creatures. Story is what goes to the root. From birth, we are inundated with stories about who we are, about how the world works, about our place in the world. This becomes a whole set of cultural mythologies when placed in the context of the whole, because, the story of the global West has its own cultural mythology, and then we were born into that. And so I think that just as quickly, story can either be that box that keeps you trapped, or it can be your ticket out. And the difference is when that box of stories, that just accumulated mess of stories that you keep in the garage and you file all your experience into those, that's when it's a trap. When it's unexamined, when there's no real depth and it's all just experience gets filed and sorted away. And we live in a culture that encourages that. We live in a culture of multi-billion-dollar industries of distraction. We live in a culture where isolation is symptomatic of our issues. We live in a culture where passive consumption of stories reigns. We are bombarded, in addition to the stories we already receive from parents, authority figures, media, we are bombarded with what I call supermarket stories. And these are the stories fresh off the shelf, not fresh. Let me correct myself. Not fresh, off the shelves, prepackaged, processed, and full of high fructose corn syrup and things like that, which for a story is like Hollywood explosions, flash and boom, or social media scandal, all of that. Those are supermarket stories, and we are just bombarded with them, aren't we? Yeah. And so it becomes difficult to examine, and it becomes difficult to know our stories as individuals, and it becomes even more difficult to know our stories as communities. Our practices and rituals of storytelling as communities have fallen apart. I believe that community and storytelling, these two things are inextricable from one another. And the disintegration of both of them, it's hard to say which came first. Our communities are falling apart because we're not sharing stories together. We don't know how to share stories together because we are not in community. So as an educator, the first thing that I try to do when I am working with a group of people is from the first second I step in the room, I want to build community. I want to build a community that names, reaffirms, and actualizes its values. And from there, we can do a lot of work. So names its values, reaffirms them, actualizes them, creating a microclimate of cultural mythology, if you will. Here in the Appalachians, we know all about microclimates. So think about a microclimate of a cultural mythology where values, beliefs, stories truly matter in a different way. I have one story in which I have plenty of stories about how storytelling has changed my life, has saved my life over and over. And it has all begun with authorship, with authority. And notice that word in there, author. If you are just letting all of your experiences be filed away into the garage of the boxes of your stories, you're not the author of your story. I'm talking about shaping the narrative every day, examining the narrative and shaping it. And I was working with one young woman who didn't know how to do this, and she was terrified to do it. She came to my one of the first 5-day summer spoken word intensives that I taught. It was for high schoolers, a 5-day workshop. In our day one of sharing, I always ask, why are you here? You could be anywhere in the world right now. Why are you here? And she told me that she had debilitating stage fright. And that she came to me, finally, to get over it. Tall order. Tall order. So we get to work day one, she's sharing stories. And we're sharing stories as a group. Day two rolls around, and she has shut down. And the silence is deafening. Everyone else is going deep with their stories, and this young woman's silence is absolutely deafening. I go to her during lunch, and I say, hey, what's going on? I understand if you don't want to share with the whole group. But from what you were sharing yesterday, you are going deep, and I want to know what's going on. I'm interested. You've caught my attention. I'm listening. And it's so hard to know nowadays that people are actually listening. And it becomes that much harder to confront the barriers of isolation that are a part of our culture, those constraints that create such distortions in the mind. Her eyes lit up when I asked her, and sometimes we just need to be asked to share our stories. So sure enough, she opened back up. She started sharing with the group, and day 4 rolls around, which is stage work and microphone day. She had never been on a microphone in her life. So I'm sitting in the theater, all my youth poets are up on the stage, and I'm holding my breath as she's stepping up to the microphone, and sure enough, she freezes. My heart stops. I don't feel like I can do anything from where I am. Instinctively, my youth poets circle around her, whispering words of encouragement to her, telling her that her story matters, that they want to hear what she has to say. And she began speaking. And if you want to know what getting free looks like, it looks like a 16-year-old girl hearing her voice amplified for the very first time. Seeing that shift in her eyes from knowing that her story actually mattered, that her voice existed and was loud and deserved to be heard. What if we as a culture, what if we as communities were to move and make that shift from passive consumption of stories to active creation, from passive consumption to taking authorship and shaping the narrative? So I was doing some of this work with the mental health community. And because I feel like I have authorship of my own story, and I've told my story so many times on hundreds of stages, I'll tell you that I've struggled with manic depression for most of my life. And it's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I get up on stages, and this has saved my life over and over. So I was doing storytelling work in the mental health community, helping the mental health community tell its story, opening up the context and all the perspectives, and what is our voice? What do we want? Who are we? And in the process of that, I ended up falling apart, having a major episode. And 5 months ago, I found myself in a psychiatric hospital. I told Jack Derbyshire, hold my spot. I don't know if I'm going to survive, but if I do, I want to talk at TED. And I'm glad to be here with y'all today. But I learned quickly that one does not survive the psych ward without making friends quickly. No. You think the world is lonely. If you don't make friends in the psych ward, you're going to have a really lonely time. And one of my comrades, I call them my comrades, one of my comrades one day, she was falling apart on the telephone. Her relationship with her mother was falling apart. She was banging the phone on the wall, crying, and I said, look, if you don't pull it together, they will not let you out of here. So either go to your room, journal, take some deep breaths. If that doesn't work, come back to me, we'll gossip about boys, if that's what needs to happen. Sure enough, she went and she wrote in her journal. She came back to me. She shared her story with me. We think we're going to burden other people with our stories, but we privilege them. We let them in. And she then privileged me. She asked me to write her a poem. I did. 30 minutes left before it lights out. I write her a poem. And I woke up the next day to find my comrades reading it around the breakfast table. And she came up to me and she said, Griffin, I slept with that poem pressed against my chest. And I'm here to tell you that sometimes a story is the last thing left to hold on to. It is the last thing. And I don't know if storytelling can save the species, but I believe it can redeem us. It is what allows us to become more fully human, more fully alive, and that is what we need as a planet, and that is what we need as a people. So I implore all of you to speak up and to please get free. Thank you.